Hello, everybody, and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of American Tungsten, an exploration and near-term development company focused on high-potential tungsten in North America. Ali Haji, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jesse. My pleasure.
I want to start things off with a discussion about tungsten because this is a metal that's not discussed enough. So could we start with the fundamentals of the tungsten sector? Give us an overview of the main uses for tungsten and the current supply-demand dynamics in place for the metal.
Absolutely. Tungsten is the hardest metal on the periodic table. It is only softer than diamond, so an extremely hard element. It has a high melting point of about 2,500 degrees centigrade. Its primary uses today are in defense, so armor piercing, shell casings, rocket heads, any sort of aerospace bodies. It's also used in high tech, so you do require it for circuitry in high tech. You also require it for commercial aviation, so you cannot build an airline. The turbine in that airline would have to have tungsten in it. It is a strengthener that, of course, is used in drill bits that drill into steel and other various metals. It's also used, ironically, in the mining industry, which we're talking about here today. Beyond that, its uses and its demand are certainly rising, and that's driven by a number of factors. One, conflict around the world is very apparent, and as a result of that, maintaining military dominance and superiority, one requires access to tungsten. Beyond that, the developing world is growing at a rapid pace, and they also have technological requirements, defense requirements, and then you have statements such as NATO now spending 5% of their GDP on defense. So tungsten's demand certainly growing. The price point, if anybody's been following that market, and yes, it is. It's not a spot price. It's very much a contract price. About $300 last year in December, now close to about $480. So it's at 14-year highs, continues to rise, and is, in terms of supply, very much dominated, much like everything else that's critical, by the Chinese. So China produces in excess of 85% of it today. They are exporting to the vast majority of the world. However, in the last 2 years, they've implemented export restrictions, which means they are not exporting tungsten readily to countries that are deemed non-friendly to China. Of course, the United States and NATO being a couple of those that are worth mentioning.
That's very interesting because a metal that's so critical for defense being controlled mostly by China, as you mentioned, over 86%, and they also have 48% of the world's tungsten reserves. As far as I understand it, right now in the United States, there is zero tungsten production and zero reserves. This seems like something that must be remedied, particularly in our current era of rising geopolitical tensions. How important is it to secure a domestic supply of tungsten in North America?
I think it's absolutely critical. North America was a tungsten powerhouse up until 2015, with North American Tungsten Corp operating the TUNG mine. That was one of the largest producers in the world. You have other projects like MacTung, which is now held under fireweed, that received about 15 or 16 million US from the government in order for them to advance that project. You've got other projects like Pilot Mountain in Nevada, Guardian Metal Resources being one of their holders, and various other organizations sort of coming up to unearth value from tungsten assets that were once in production in North America. So we do have production, but it did cease. The differentiator, I'd say, for us as American Tungsten is the fact that we have a past producing mine. It is a mine that produced until 1960, but it's also on private and patented land. It sits above the water table. And as a result, permitting for DSO, given our very high grade of 0.63, makes it come online a hell of a lot quicker than the vast majority of our peers. Speaking to the criticality of the metal and, of course, the military dominance that is required in this very strange geopolitical environment that we live in today, we would expect that supply chains need to come back online in local jurisdictions. The Made in America Act in the United States is very much pursuing that. We have seen EXIM really step up their efforts to get things funded as far as bringing things online that would provide these critical metals to the local jurisdiction. You have the Department of Defense stepping up. Historically, the United States, much like any other nation that is very focused on its military, would have had a stockpile, so to speak, of metal. That stockpile is, of course, now being depleted given the state of and they are working, or I would say that the administration is working with various mining companies, including ourselves, to look at unearthing tungsten in North America, building those stockpiles, aiding with infrastructure, permitting, as well as offtakes. So a very supportive administration currently, and the imperative that we bring tungsten back online is critical.
So that segues perfectly into the next question, which is the Trump administration looking to fast track mining projects to secure a domestic source of strategic minerals. Now, obviously, with tungsten's critical importance in military applications, how much is it on the radar of this administration, and what sort of policies, favorable policies, do you expect in regards to mining tungsten in the United States?
It's a great question purely because since the Trump administration has taken power, we've seen the DIBC, the Defense Industrial Base Consortium, name tungsten as the third most critical metal on their list. We are members of that organization. We're also members of the Critical Minerals Institute, where we've seen tungsten named as number one in terms of most critical. This is echoed around all of the government agencies. The DoD, of course, is looking to get their hands on supply with a stockpile that is probably depleting given the state of the planet. We also have the Department of Energy that is very keen to bring tungsten supply and stock onto their call it balance sheet. And the reason they're doing so is tungsten is also used in nuclear power. Given its high melting point. So the various agencies have a certain requirement for this very critical metal. And given the Chinese export restrictions over the last 2 years, which were put in place, I should add, well before the trade and tariff wars. So even though we are working towards resolving these trade and tariff wars, nobody's talking about tungsten. Tungsten is being looked at by the DLA, which is the Defense Logistics Act. We have the national labs that are now being engaged. We have actually started the process of working with an Idaho national lab to help us better understand our technology, as well as our processing and potentially some funding. We have a lobby group out of Washington that is engaging with all of these government agencies to help us unlock that capital. We also have Fast 41, which is a fast tracking for permitting with respect to mines that are requiring production permitting. The differentiator for us, as I mentioned very briefly at the onset of this conversation, is the fact that we are a past producer on private patented land above the water table. And so our permitting process is far simpler than perhaps somebody in Nevada starting up with putting together a resource and then ultimately coming to production in about 5 to 7 years. But I think the tailwinds are evident. I think tungsten has been critical since 1979. On the Department of Defense's critical list, but it is now, of course, transcending all of the other agencies to ensure that there is sufficient supply. There are a couple of APTs in the United States, Global Tungsten and Powders, which is owned by the Plancy Group in Europe, being one of the processors that produces 99.9% pure tungsten powder. The Canadian government very recently announced that they would potentially look at putting an APT plant in Surrey, British Columbia. So I think this is a narrative that sets the tone to nations such as China that we have the resource. We can certainly put in the infrastructure to build our own floor in the pricing model. And, one of the things I like to say in some of the interviews is, what if China were to turn back on tungsten supply? What would that do to our project and the price of tungsten? And my answer is rather simple. If I were running the DoD, I wouldn't want Chinese tungsten in my nuclear submarine. And it's evident that is, in fact, what is being echoed in the halls of power in Washington.
Very interesting. Now, the tungsten market is projected to grow from 5.5 billion, where it was in 2023, to approximately 9.5 billion by 2030. What are the major drivers behind this increase in demand? Obviously, you've laid out some of them. Maybe if you could dive a little bit deeper. And how should investors think about this level of industry growth?
I think you've got to get behind it before the station leaves or the train leaves the station. The reason we have this growth is quite simply the fact that defense spending is increasing around the world. The developing nations are starting to grow their technological infrastructure, and they will require tungsten to do so, as well as their militaries. And you've got tungsten's uses in renewables or renewable energy. You cannot have wind turbines without tungsten. You cannot have nuclear power plants without tungsten. And so it's a very critical piece of the energy transition as well. The energy transition has sort of backed off in terms of how quickly it was moving along post-pandemic, but it's still a very critical piece for the global south. And we're seeing that more and more in play today. As we start to see economies develop around the world, the requirement for tungsten will continue to rise. And its hardness thereby limits its recyclability. So it is in use for longer than perhaps aluminum. An aluminum can that you drink your soda and you toss it in the recycle bin, that's aluminum going back in the system. But tungsten's hardness by design, of course, restricts its ability to be recycled as quickly as some of the other readily available minerals.
Well, let's pivot to how American Tungsten fits into the picture. You've given us some hints about the company so far. Could you maybe start by giving us a bit of a deeper dive and an overview of the company?
American Tungsten trades on the Canadian Securities Exchange under ticker TUNG, on the OTCQB under DEMRF. We're also trading in Frankfurt. The purpose of the company, as the name would imply, of course, is to bring our tungsten asset in Idaho back online. The IMA asset consists of a number of private and patented claims on a past-producing asset. That's about 57,000 feet drilled on the project by prior operators. It first started production in about 1889, ran until about 1960 when the Second World War Act came to an end and production ceased. 1979 to 82, we had Inspiration Development, which is Anglo-American, spend about a fair bit of capital there, 12,000 feet drilled. And their intent was around the tungsten and moly. Then we had Gentor come in 2008 to 2010, where they drilled an additional 25,000 feet. So it is a brownfield advanced past producer. It is not a greenfield project. And that, of course, differentiates us from the crowd. Beyond that, all of the drilling data has shown us extremely high intercepts of tungsten. In fact, when it was in production, the head grade was 0.7, which is widely considered amongst the highest in the world, if not the top three highest in the world. If you look at the projects down in Australia, 0.11 is sort of where they lie. Things that we're seeing in Nevada, Pilot Mountain, for instance, about 0.23. MacTung is the only project that is quite similar in grade at 0.7, and that's Fireweed Minerals in Canada. So we've got extremely high grade. We've also got 2 ounces per ton of silver, and we have 0.15% of moly. So the silver amounts to about a $77 to $82 credit per ton based on the price and where we continue to see silver go. The moly is about $18 to $22 as well. And so we've got about $100 that we receive in credits outside of the 0.63% tungsten that we have on our project. In terms of the asset, with the 57,000 feet drilled, we know there's a highly probable resource, about 1.1 million ton at 0.63. Goal for us this summer is to do some validation drilling, bring that up to a 4311 compliant resource, as well as potentially grow that resource body. We understand our mine and development plans. We've rehabilitated our road system for heavy vehicles. We are currently in the midst of rehabilitating the portals and their entryways. We're also going to be putting in ventilation shafts through the manways that connect the 0 level and the D level at it. And the intent this summer is to make sure that the pads by the end of August are ready to go. And we have a drilling program completed by the end of October with an updated resource statement to show a longer life of mine for the project in and around November of this year. So a project that's in a great jurisdiction. Idaho is a state that is very mining friendly. We sit on a copper moly porphyry system, I should say, that companies like Centerra have the Thompson Creek mine operating in that very same geological system. We've got local populations that had their grandfathers work on the project when it was in production. So a big sort of social tick there. People are very keen to get back to work. We've got sound infrastructure. We've got high voltage power on site. We have water rights. We have paved road access a mile away from the project. We have rail access 18 miles from the project. And the intent with the DSO model that we're looking to employ for American Tungsten at IMA would mean that we're putting this ore body on a rail system for 180 miles, at which point we have access to one of the 2 mills we're looking to contract in terms of our processing. So it can come to production quite quickly. If we were to beneficiate the ore on site using X-ray ore sorting, that would vastly change the economics and be a more highly profitable business, I should say. At 0.63 with DSO, our internal PE estimates are certainly very profitable.
Well, let's talk about the team behind American Tungsten and how you plan to leverage their expertise to move the project forward. And maybe you could start with yourself and your own background.
Absolutely. My background stems in asset management. I spent about 14 years at Invesco in various capacities, based between Toronto, Hong Kong, back to Toronto, and then over to London, England, where I spent about 5 years at Invesco. My focus there was around M&A primarily, so more of the fix-it guy, get in there, get it done, get out. I spent a fair bit of time setting up the offices in India, in Prince Edward Island, in Canada. So a lot of outsourcing, offshoring, and ensuring that we're running the operation in as lean a possible way, in as lean a way as possible. That ultimately led to me leaving the organization in 2016, where I had a good severance check, so to speak, and was keen to become an entrepreneur by myself. My father has been in the mining sector for the last 4 decades, having owned and operated mines in Zambia, producing copper concentrate for Chinese consumption primarily. And it was never something that actually I thought I would do, but I ended up falling into the industry in 2016 when a business partner of mine approached me to be an M&A advisor to acquire Centerra's ATO mine in Mongolia. So I joined him on that journey. We acquired the ATO mine from Centerra in 2016. We went public in 2018 and brought the mine to production in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. March 2020 was first gold pour. During my various visits to Mongolia and having followed sort of the critical metals sector for quite some time, I set up a company named ION Energy, one that was focused on lithium in Mongolia and then ultimately lithium in Canada as well. At the bottom of the lithium market this year in March, we were able to sign a JV agreement that was 10x our market cap in headline number. We were also able to bring about $5.5 million US into the company, non-dilutive capital, and of course a path to production in which we would be free carried to commercial production with a 2.5% NSR. So a very proud accomplishment with respect to where the lithium market is today. Beyond that, with American Tungsten, I joined in April of this year, and shortly after my appointment, I was very keen to bring on some very senior members to help assist us with the board and management team that showed a very strong bench to the market. One of those individuals is Dan Nicholas. Dan Nicholas is a consultant to a consultancy. So essentially, he's able to do that because he ran the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office. He ran the largest fund in their history, $40 billion issued to various public and private companies by the government, particularly from the Department of Energy. Prior to that, he was a banker at Morgan Stanley and Salomon Brothers, based out of New York and Washington, really understands the banking side of the house, but also has all the relationships in government that we look to leverage for non-dilutive capital. So very pleased to have Dan. The other individual I added shortly thereafter is Jim Whitaker. Jim is the Chief Operating Officer of Capstone Copper, about a $6.5 billion copper behemoth today. He was the president of Escondida, one of the largest copper mines in the world. He was at BHP and Barrick, where he's actually brought mines to production. So between us, we've already got 2 mine builders, Jim and myself with Step Gold. And then we have Murray Nye, who's president of the company. He brought the Drumlummon mine to production in the United States, so a lot of key relationships in the United States and also experience with respect to bringing mines to production. The other folks that we've added very recently, one individual named David Sabarin. He is our VP Mining Engineering. He has built underground mining operations in the past and will be very close to site and helping develop our plans to come to production here in the next 12 to 18 months. The other individuals I've mentioned, I think very importantly, one Finley Baker is one such individual. He's on our technical advisory team, an individual that understands the tungsten market very well, has been part of the sort of production called ecosystem up until 2015 when sites across North America started to go under care and maintenance. So a very seasoned team that includes mine builders and very focused list of experts that understand the mineral that we are looking to bring back online here with American Tungsten.
And what does the company's cash position look like at present? How much runway does that cash give you? Do you have any debt, and how do you plan to raise capital when needed in the future?
It's a good question. You know, we announced a placement for $2.5 million. I think it was Canada Day, and people were quite surprised that we did that because, of course, it was a holiday, and then we had July 4th on that week as well. But we announced $2.5 million on that week. Around July 22nd, I believe, we closed $7 million. So we had a lot of investor demand. We brought on 3 major institutions from around the world, validating our story, and of course being sticky long money that would be follow-on capital if needed. The majority of it was retail investors. With respect to our run rate today, we are well positioned to complete our rehabilitation program, update our resource statement based on our drilling, continue stakeholder management and any permitting up until we make a final investment decision for production. So we will not be going to market anytime soon. Based on my experience, hopefully the team recognizes that every dollar we spend in the company is one that is looked at very closely. If it's not value generating or value creation, it is considered and then considered again before it leaves the treasury. So we're in good position in that regard. With respect to non-dilutive capital, that really is our focus. So we are going after these government agencies, as I mentioned, and our intent is to bring in as much non-dilutive capital as possible to bring this mine to production. For our listeners, we're trading at about a 32 million Canadian market cap today, $31 million market cap Canadian. Our capex to come to production is only 20 million US. And that gives us a life of mine of 7.5 years, spinning out about 48% in profit for internal PE numbers that, of course, I cannot publish. But rest assured that we believe this to be an extremely profitable initiative. Beyond the government agencies, I would say that the institutions have certainly shown support. They would not have come into this financing had they not seen value in what we're trying to build at a significant percentage of that press financing as well. So follow-on capital, should the government not be able to execute in the timelines that we're envisioning to bring American Tungsten back online, we have various institutions that are willing to step in and assist us with our growth trajectory. We also have 6,000 US retail shareholders today, which is a significantly higher number than the average. We have enough shareholder equity to meet the minimum uplist requirements on the NASDAQ and the NYSE Amex. Our share price is not quite there yet, but we are certainly on track to get to one of those two exchanges, and that, of course, would include an equity plug as well.
And what are the main news items and catalysts that are upcoming for the company that for the remainder of 2025 and into 2026 that shareholders of American Tungsten can look forward to?
I think, we've started off this summer with a bang, and it's somewhat indicative of a resource supercycle. I think everybody's working this summer. It's August. We're sitting here. We're on a podcast, and we're getting things done. So for us, we hit the ground running after we raised our financing. We started our rehabilitation work immediately. We've amped up the team. You will start to see a steady bit of news flow from us with respect to advancement on site, both with respect to rehab, but also getting ready for our drilling program. Those drilling results, as they become available to us from an assay perspective, an updated resource statement that is 43-101 compliant in November. Perhaps some material news around an uplist strategy on one of those two U.S. exchanges that I spoke of. And then into next year would come in our development plan. So what exactly does our development plan look like? What does our PEA look like? What's the profitability for the company? And then in and around October of next year, at the very, conservatively, I should say, is when we would start to bring operations online for production.
Great. Well, I'm going to put a link in the description below to the American Tungsten website as well as social media profile for people who want to follow along with the company. Ali, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Jesse.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.